welcome to the Gloucester Unitarian Universalist Church. I love saying that. This is our 5th Sunday back indoors in person, and soon I hope that it will feel so ordinary again that I'll stop counting the weeks. But regardless, we're so glad to be back in our 1806 home, and we're so glad that all of you are here with us this morning. We are a warm and welcoming community devoted to spiritual growth, social transformation, and care of our larger community and the natural world. If you are visiting us here this morning and would like to become better connected and learn more about our community life, we invite you to grab one of the yellow cards on the backs of the pews and fill them out. And you'll have an opportunity. You can just drop it in the collection plate later on. You can also sign the guest book in the vestibule on your way out. As a welcoming congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association, we affirm the full inclusion of people of all gender identities and expressions. Our guest musician, once again, is Steve Lacey, back with us. Steve, thanks again for being here with us this morning. And with that, Mern Sibley, our worship associate, has a few announcements.
Morning. I do have a few announcements, yes. Today, let me take this thing off. Today is Stewardship Sunday, and that's the day congregation members are asked to pledge their support to the church. Our canvas theme this year is Breaking Bread Together. We rejoice in being together and sharing bread after many months of separation. The service and the lunch afterwards are kind of a pandemic adaptation of the Soup and Stewardship Sunday that we've done before. So instead of going downstairs to enjoy homemade soups and watch a video about our wonderful community and pledge our support together, you will hear instead a stewardship message from Dick Prouty near the end of the service, and then you'll be invited to sign your pledge card as the offering. And because daylight and social distancing in the sanctuary make for very poor visibility, we're not going to have a video this year, unfortunately. So it's, again, a pandemic adaptation. So at the conclusion of the service, the stewardship team invites you, one and all, to enjoy coffee and a harvest lunch out on the allée outside on a beautiful day. And in breaking Alexandra's bread together out of doors, we will keep each other safe while confirming the deep spiritual connection among us. If you're visiting this morning, please be our guests and join us for food and friendship, and you have no obligation to contribute anything. So our service is being live streamed this morning. We have switched from the Zoom sort of situation to live streaming on our own YouTube channel. The cameras are placed to maximize privacy and minimize disruption. You can see the iPhone cameras on either side of the sanctuary near the front, and the main video camera is up in the gallery behind the clock. So for anyone watching from home, we invite you to have a candle or chalice and matches ready, so that when you light the chalice to begin our service, we can join together in spirit. And we remind everyone, please take a look at the weekly email, the announcements for more information about everything going on. We are bit by bit getting all of the traditional pieces in place for our services. We aren't handing out orders of service yet, but today we have placed in the pews white cards that have the words to our affirmation and our chalice extinguishing, so visitors and folks who haven't memorized these yet, you can read along. And we have also started to invite people to contribute flowers for our services. If you're interested in donating flowers, please contact Christine in the church office. Today's flowers were donated by Diana Peck and Sally Waite. Thank you both. Now, since we're not yet taking up a traditional collection, we have placed the collection plates by the doors, and we invite you, if you wish, to leave an offering for the work of our church in the plate as you leave. And last announcement, our next book discussion group is coming up on October the 20th at 7 o'clock p.m. We're reading The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich, and this is a great book. Everyone is welcome to participate, whether you've ever joined us before or not. And now let us deepen our hearts and our spirits for worship.
Our opening words this morning are by the Reverend Leslie Takahashi. Come, come, whoever you are. Come with your hurts, your imperfections, your places that feel raw and exposed. Come, come, whoever you are. Come with your strengths that the world shudders to hold. Come with your wild imaginings of a better world. Come with your hopes that it seems no one wants to hear. Wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, we will make a place for you. We will build a home together. Ours is no caravan of despair. We walk together. Come, yet again come, and let us worship together. In the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition, we begin our services with the ritual of lighting our flaming chalice. The bowl of our chalice represents the warm welcome of our community, and the flame represents our never-ending search for wisdom, knowledge, and love. If you have a candle or chalice at home, I invite you to go ahead and light it with us now as Myrn comes forward to light our chalice. And I invite you in body or in spirit to rise to say our affirmation together. Once again, the words are on white pew cards in the backs of the pews. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. Please be seated. Okay.
I invite you now to open your gray hymnals for our responsive reading. Please turn to number 591 in the back of the hymnal. So go all the way to the back, 591. And I'm going to ask you to read the italicized portions. This one is called, I Call That Church Free. I call that church free which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence. It binds together families and generations, protecting against the idolatry of any human claim to absolute truth or authority.
This covenant is the charter and responsibility and joy of worship in the face of death as well as life.
I call that church free, which brings individuals into a caring, trusting fellowship
that protects and nourishes their integrity and spiritual freedom that yearns to belong to the Church Universalist.
It is open to insight and conscience from every source. It bursts through rigid tradition, giving rise to new and living language, to new and broader fellowship.
It is a pilgrim church, a servant church, not an adventure of the Spirit.
The goal is the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, the one for the liberty of prophesying, the other for the ministry of healing.
It aims to find unity and diversity under the promptings of the Spirit that bloweth where it listeth and maketh all things new. I invite us now into a time of prayer to be followed by silent meditation. we begin for a moment of stillness. Let's pause in this stillness to listen to what might be stirring in our hearts that is so often obscured by all the clamor of our daily lives. Spirit of life, source of all, we have joined together this morning grateful for this religious home and for all the connections that hold us and sustain us. We pause now to remember all those who have come before us, who loved this community into being, and who were faithful stewards of its future. And all those who were loved and challenged both by the strong ties that were woven together into a beautiful fabric. Even as we here are loved and held and challenged today. We think of all those who share in this creative life of spirit and grace and love. We think with hope of all those who will follow, weaving more strands into the fabric of this community of memory and care. We ask your blessings on this house, on these people, past, present, and future, that all may know the joy of welcome and of belonging and the possibilities for growth and transformation. We ask that our hearts may be open to compassion, that our minds may be open to wisdom, and that our spirits may be open to grace as we enter into silence. Amen. proceed, I have to ask that everyone have their mask over their nose and their mouth. As you know, the board require mask wearing inside unless you're speaking. And I am going to enforce that by, if necessary, stopping the service if someone's not wearing their mask. So I hate to interject this into the middle of this, but we will do what we have to do to keep the community safe. This morning's second reading is taken from the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Dr. Kimmerer is a botanist, a professor, and author, and a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. And I chose this passage to bring an Indigenous voice into our service on this Indigenous Peoples' Day weekend. She wrote, "My father loves wild strawberries. So for this Father's Day, my mother would almost always make him strawberry shortcake. She baked the crusty shortcakes and whipped the heavy cream, but we kids were responsible for the berries. We each got an old jar or two and spent the Saturday before the celebration out in the fields, taking forever to fill them as more and more berries ended up in our mouths. Finally, we returned home and poured them all out on the kitchen table to sort out the bugs. I'm sure we missed some, but Dad never mentioned the extra protein. In fact, he thought wild strawberry shortcake was the best possible present, or so he had us convinced. It was a gift that could never be bought. As children raised by strawberries, we were probably unaware that the gift of strawberries was from the fields themselves, not from us. Our gift was time and attention and care and red-stained fingers. Gifts from the earth or from each other establish a particular relationship, an obligation of sorts to give, to receive, and to reciprocate. The field gave to us, we gave to my dad, and we tried to give back to the strawberries. When the berry season was done, the plants would send out slender red runners to make new plants. And because I was fascinated by the way they would travel over the ground, looking for good places to take root, I would weed out little patches of bare ground where the runners touched down. Sure enough, tiny little roots would emerge from the runner, and by the end of the season, there would be even more plants, ready to bloom under the next strawberry moon. No person taught us this. The strawberries showed us. And because they had given us a gift, an ongoing relationship opened between us. She continues, we are all bound by a covenant of reciprocity, plant breath for animal breath, winter and summer, predator and prey, grass and fire, night and day, living and dying. Water knows this. Clouds know this. Soil and rocks know they are dancing in a continuous giveaway of making, unmaking, and making again the earth. The moral covenant of reciprocity calls us to honor our responsibilities for all we have been given, for all that we have taken. It's our turn now, long overdue. Here ends our reading. Braiding Sweetgrass is a beautiful book about indigenous wisdom and what plants have to teach us, and it is full of stories. Here's another one. I had trouble choosing. The author, Robin Wall Kimmerer, recounted that she once met a European engineering student who had gone wild rice harvesting in Minnesota with an Ojibwe family. He accompanied the harvesters out in their canoe as they paddled through the rice beds and knocked ripened wild rice into the canoe. Now, as an engineering student, he noticed that the traditional method was not very efficient, and that probably half of the ripened rice fell into the water. So he designed for them a device to capture all of the rice, something that they could attach to the canoe. And he told them, he calculated they could collect 85% more rice if they used it. The Ojibwe family were polite, but they pointed out that the rice had to be able to seed itself for the next year. And they told him, "What we leave behind is not wasted. You know, we're not the only ones who like rice. Do you think the ducks would stop here if we took it all?" Our teachings tell us to never take more than half. So we meet Dr. Kimmerer as a young girl, watching daily for the wild strawberries, first to flower and then to form tiny green fruits and ripen until finally they could be picked and eaten. She was, she said, raised by strawberries. Wild strawberries, as it turns out, had much to teach an observant child. She watched, and she learned that she could take freely from the gift that the earth was offering her. And she learned to give back, to reciprocate, and to say thank you. The way she offered her gratitude was to prepare the land so that the runners of the strawberry plants would find good purchase and be able to more easily put down roots. And in this way, a relationship developed, one of reciprocity, of alternately giving and receiving. There's deep meaning in the stories I'm telling you this morning. Here in these stories, I found relationships based on ancient covenants between the people and the land. Our teachings tell us never to take more than half. The people pledged, and the land responds. Now, the practice of creating covenants is very important to Unitarian Universalists. We are a faith tradition that does not form around shared creeds or belief systems, as do most religions. Instead, we are people of covenant, of promises made to one another, of vows. This is a tradition that has been passed down to us from our Puritan ancestors when they first came to what became the United States. It's usually a surprise for contemporary UUs to learn that we draw from the Puritans, that we consider them our spiritual ancestors, because our religious beliefs have moved so far, far beyond whatever would have been acceptable in the 1600s. And yet, what we kept was the Puritan beliefs that congregations should be able to govern themselves, to organize themselves, and that people could gather together in communities to practice their religion without a hierarchy being imposed by a religious organization. And to be able to organize in this way, Puritans created covenants among themselves, between themselves and God. So I wanted to share with you the language this morning from the Salem Church Covenant of 1639. We covenant with the Lord and one with another, and do bind ourselves in the presence of God to walk together in all his ways, according as he is pleased to reveal himself unto us in his blessed word of truth. To walk together. To bind ourselves in community. And so here's how that sounds to a UU congregation now in 2021. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. We state our vow here every Sunday. We gather in community. Life together in community offers us so very much, as we have discovered, especially in the last 19 months, as we have struggled to live much more solitary lives. Community offers us connection, opportunities for growth, the chance to look beyond ourselves. Community is a life-creating and life-sustaining force, the connective tissue that brings us together to walk together. It reminds me of the definition of God offered by Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams, whose words we read together a moment ago. God is the community-forming power. I'm fascinated by that concept. Community not as an organization or an entity, but as a force, as divine energy. If we look at community as something so elemental, as life-giving, it takes on a new importance. We become not just part of an organization, but part of this power that surrounds us and connects us, this power that some might call God, some might call the spirit of life. What we do is vital for both our own well-being and for others. It's vital, and it's also challenging. It requires recognizing that the community does not exist only to meet our individual needs. It exists to enable people to come together, to be seen and accepted for who they are, to be part of a living body that transforms each of us and in turn is transformed by our presence. By definition, it is larger than any one of us. It is where we practice raising the collective we over the individual I. Putting we above I creates tension. We humans tend to prize our independence and our individuality. We see this tension almost daily around us these days as people reject vaccines and the wearing of masks because they claim it limits their personal freedom. But participating in community means that we have to be conscious of that tension, to be able to meet our own needs and at the same time recognizing that we are not present for ourselves alone, that we are part of something larger than ourselves, that we have an obligation to help protect. To understand that half of the wild rice seeds need to be left behind for others and to sustain the future crop. And so we try to balance that tension between the individual and the group by creating covenant, as have so many before us, to create that intention to walk together, to share, to understand that we cannot always put our own needs above those of the well-being of the larger community, to understand that we must give as well as receive, that we must practice reciprocity, to give when we can, and to take when we need support, to put we over I. This morning, we pause to consider the value of our gathered community. what it means to us, and what it means for us to be a part of it. As we do each October, we begin today the process of raising the funds we need to sustain ourselves for the next year, to care for our building, to pay our staff, and to participate in the broader community outside of these walls, to take our force outside. We so often find these conversations uncomfortable, as though we should never talk about money in church. But if we approach our life here from the perspective of reciprocity, we understand that we give when we are able, and sometimes we receive. Recently, I was feeling sentimental, and I looked at the vows that you and I made to each other on the day that I was installed as your 25th settled minister. We have our own covenant, you and I. We each made pledges to serve this community that we have honored over and over through the years since then. And I am pledging my support to you here again today. I will be walking with you in this endeavor. It is my great pride to have served as your minister during this most challenging time, to have watched you meet these challenges, to not turn away, to continue to do all you could to sustain our community life, however and whenever you could. We have accomplished a great deal together, and I hope that you share my pride. And so as I do each year, I will pledge to make a financial contribution to the health of this community, because I believe in it, I believe in you, and I ask you to join me. As I close, I find myself wishing that we could sing, and I hope we'll be able to soon. Hold on. But these words from my favorite hymn rose in my head as I was writing this, and I will leave you with this. Wake now, my senses, and feel the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Blessed be. Amen.
Weird. I tell you, my ears are mighty busy. Hearing aids, glasses, and masks. Not a good combination. We have the privilege of hearing from two people who have helped us on the stewardship team this morning. Dick will begin by talking about the sacred community.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you, Reverend Janet, for those inspirational words. When I think of community, I always think of Martin Luther King and his historic quest to begin the development of an inclusive community for all of us. So I'd like to start with a reading from 1956 from his essay, Facing the Challenge of a New Age. But the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. And the end is the creation of the beloved community. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. It is this type of understanding goodwill that will transform the deep gloom of the old age into the exuberant gladness of the new age. It is this love which will bring about miracles in the hearts of men. So we have the opportunity in our church community to continue to work on deepening our relationships to each other in our own community. If we can keep this vision of Martin Luther King, this idea of the beloved community, in our minds, we can reach much further in creating a community that we only can now imagine. A community of environmental justice beyond our own building, of racial justice within our community, the greater community of Gloucester and Cape Ann, and a deeper caring for each other that we express in so many ways, weekly and daily. So our gifts of support to our community, as we pledge, gives us the foundation to create the value of a beloved community among us. It's essential. Please consider this as you think about your annual pledge of support to our community.
Now Newt will speak to us for a couple of minutes about what's different.
I always ask that question to myself, what's different? Does your mailbox look anything like mine from time to time? Let's see, Salvation Army, Mass Audubon, Amnesty International, UNICEF, Guardian Circle, and of course we get Action and Gloucester Food Bank and sort of thing. And then we get one here, it says Gloucester Unitarian Universalist Church. That's the one we have today. All worthy causes, I would say. Doing good work, progressive, making our world a better place. All worthy of my contributions. Is there a difference? That's my persistent question. A difference between all these worthy causes and their individual requests for financial support. Here's my answer. One of these here is different by design. Sometimes we don't see it. We may slip into thinking of it as something we have a fundraiser for. And we put on a campaign, and we plan a kickoff, and we set a goal. And then when we score our goal, we congratulate ourselves and we put it away till next year. Status quo. I suggest that our very design is best brought to life, not by thinking of this as a fundraising, but by thinking of it as a consciousness, a heart, a spirit-raising activity. Because it is what we uniquely do and experience, not necessarily over here. For example, here we hear about our 7 principles from time to time, like I affirm the worth and dignity of each person, or I am part of an interdependent web of all of life, or I am free to study and practice and learn and grow my spirit as I choose. These are calling like a new birth of freedom, a path to loving our neighbors as ourselves. They certainly raise my consciousness when I think about them. And this is where uniquely, these are central to our reason for gathering. So there's a difference. My consciousness is raised when we, at our best, share our desire for inner peace and learn that peace in our world can only begin with us. We can't go out and fight for it, really. My consciousness is raised when we, at our best, pay attention to the great teachings of inspiration and wisdom and love, like some of the readings we heard this morning. This exposure is almost totally absent from the other places in our lives. Here it is. My consciousness is raised by keeping silence in this hallowed space with you folks who want to keep silence once in a while. And from walking in the door and hearing the creaking boards and hearing the organ and sensing the expectation, almost like an awakening, as the Spirit jumps up and I see it in your eyes. So see, I see something quite different, something uniquely worthy. And if we recall how our consciousness is raised, our spirits are raised by our experience here and within this community, we will recognize the value of our giving to it and the meaning of it. Surely if we look at this request in these ways, the church will have the necessary financial support. But most importantly, giving is something you and I do for ourselves. Is that a radical idea? Because as we begin to understand how giving works, as we practice it, the balance of giving, receiving, as Janet was speaking of, we will experience our spirits lift. And you've experienced that from giving to something. Giving and receiving as love shows us how. Thank you.
Thank you, Newt. Think of what we have done together over the last 19 months. We joined our spirits every Sunday without being able to meet in person. We managed the technical challenges of Zoom, recording, and live streaming. We stewarded church finances, visited each other's gardens, discussed books, and even conducted a wildly successful socks and underwear drive. We have also kept each other safe. We are mighty. Now, in the fall of 2021, we are finally together again in this sanctuary. Soon we will break bread together outside to celebrate being rejoined. Be comforted that your church is financially sound. A few years ago, the church had to dip into endowment to cover operating expenses. Not this year or last or the one before. And we have some cash on hand toward future obligations. Pledging is an outward and visible sign of our inward commitment, our shared search for truth, our covenant to love one another and to cherish the world. If the church is to grow in spirit, we can help it by supporting it to the best of our ability. If you open your envelope, we ask that you make your pledge at the same level as last year. If you are able to give more, you will enable us to achieve more. After a short musical interlude to give you some time with your pledge forms, the ushers who don't know this, I have to go and get them, will actually be doing a collection today, bringing the offering plates through the congregation. And your pledge cards can be your offering. If you were a guest, you can put in a goodwill offering if you wish. Hey, you guys, I need you to pass the plates in a couple minutes. Yes, I'm sorry you didn't know that. Hey, they can do it, or you can, whichever you want. Where are those plates? They're right. They're supposed to be right there. Okay. to put pens and surveys as well as pledge forms in the collection plate. And now your pledges will be gratefully received.
Now, as we prepare to go outside and enjoy a wonderful lunch together, may you know this community of faith as life-creating and sustaining, as shelter and as refuge. May you feel held by its love and challenged by its call for growth and transformation. And may you see your place in the greater whole and know belonging. Blessed be. Amen. And now I invite you to hold up your candles if you're at home, and otherwise to together say with me the words to extinguish our chalice. we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of connection. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace, return in love. Amen.